All right, welcome back to another edition of the Throws Doc podcast. I'm your doc, Dr. Charles Inferna, writing scripts to cure your throwing ailments. The ailments we're talking about today is 2 weeks out, approximately 2 weeks out. D3 Outdoor Nationals, and the ailment is what to do next. So, get a lot of questions about this all the time. Like proper planning and periodization and all these really big words in the coaching field and things, and how to best prepare our athletes for competition when it matters most. And we're in a unique situation this year because I am 99.9% sure that there aren't going to be 17 athletes or 17 more athletes that throw farther than Dylan at 52 meters and change. So I'm fairly certain we're going to throw the discus at D3 Outdoor Nationals. Pretty confident about that. Hammer's interesting because Hammer, we're in the top 30, but there's a huge gap between 30, well, in this case we're 28 now, and 22. But not a really big gap from 22 to 10, right? So where we stand right now, 2.5 meters, basically puts us in the top 12 for competing on Saturday at D3 Nationals. Discus is on Thursday. Pretty sure we're set there. Probably not going to throw the shot put on Friday. So there's a good chance, right? So the next couple of weeks, really interesting because we have a regional meet left, and then if we want a last chance qualifier, which at this point for our athletes, if they're not qualified for regionals, season's pretty much over unless we go to a meet before regionals, which that's a whole nother conversation in itself. So essentially, for our throwers, at least in this region, this part of the country, in the Northeast, there might be 3 more opportunities to compete. So 18 more live throws per event if you make the finals in all 3. And what I've shared with Dylan, and I don't mind sharing here because I think it's important, at least to give people an idea of like the thought process and the decision making behind it, is discus. I'm gonna throw at regionals, right? Because that's something that Dylan's interested in competing at. He won regionals in the discus last year. It'd be cool to kind of defend that title and have one last real big competitive competition before nationals. Not that last chance won't, but it's different expectations when we get to that point in the season as far as competitions go, right? Like, if you're on the cusp, you're really pushing hard, right? You might not have those top-tier athletes competing because they already solidified their spot. And what I've encouraged Dylan to do, and ultimately, and this is really my philosophy, our philosophy, is that compete at regionals because he wants to, right? Defend his title. It's all good. And then leave that last chance meet alone. Not compete. Don't compete 5 days before nationals because a couple things can happen, right? If, hypothetically, it's a really poor performance, the last thing in your mind is a really poor, or the freshest thing in your mind, rather, is a really poor performance. And you're not that far out from nationals, which should be the biggest performance of your season, hopefully. If we have that outcome at regionals, we have like 10 days before nationals, right? A long time to kind of like figure out what happened, how to adjust and make changes, if any, and keep moving forward with the plan, right? But so close to the competition could be bad. Also, if you have that huge performance at that meet too, then it's difficult to build upon also, right? So I'll give you an example. And Dylan is a perfect example for this. He PR'd out of his mind at regionals last year. PR'd out of his mind, right? And then it was really difficult to come back, I think, and try and PR again. Even though he didn't need to PR in order to be an All-American, he could have thrown 2 meters under his PR. And he still would have made the finals and been fine, right? But it depends on your outlook and your perspective on things and how to approach the competitions, right? So I'm more of a, I don't know if a thrower's coach is the right terminology, but I want to give my athletes autonomy, right? They could be in the driver's seat. However, I've said that a lot. Ultimately, we are going to be responsible for what happens in the competition. We as in us, the dyad. And then we have to be able to, at least as a coach, have a plan of if it goes really well or if it goes really poorly. Because you're going to need to bounce back from that, right? So, with Lewis, he wanted to compete every weekend. And I was very hesitant about that. And we didn't do the last chance meets. That was something that Naz we didn't do, right? We went to ECACs and then it was nationals, but the schedule was configured differently back then. Actually, it was probably more stressful back then. So we had your conference championship, E8s, then we had states, then we had ECACs, and then nationals. So indoor, it was those meets, the latter 3 meets, back to back to back, where we had states, excuse me, and then we get ready and primed up to go to ECACs, and then less than a week later, we would be throwing at nationals. If you go back even farther, when I was an athlete at Fredonia, in the first couple of years that I coached at Fredonia, it was even worse, I guess, depending on how you look at it. We had Suniacs one weekend, and then we had states, and then we had ECACs, and then we had nationals. So if you're a top athlete, right, like the very best in whatever event, essentially you're competing 4 weekends in a row, maybe, in order to score points for your team and do well and try and win. I was never in that position. I never qualified for nationals. Our teams were never in contention to win ECACs or states or Stuniacs for that matter. So for me, it was trying to compete at every meet, every single weekend, no matter what. I didn't get the chance to for ECACs my senior year. That was taken away from me, both indoor and outdoor. So I didn't have a chance to compete at what that would have been my high-profile meet, right? So for coaches who are athletes who are on the bubble, there's coaches who are athletes in the top 10 or top 5. Now, there really are things to think about. Unless your athlete is so good, let's say like Lewis's 2016 indoor season, right, that you could not worry about Empire 8, not really worry about states either, and then really dial in for the last 2 weeks, okay? Like, he was top far and away meters, well, by that point, close to meter, ahead of everybody. In our region, essentially, there was really no fear of a loss. We came close a couple times, but that wasn't the goal. Was to try and boost our average, have high marks, not necessarily try and PR all the time, and work on certain technical cues. Anyway, past history, when you look at indoor, what has happened is you have some athletes in our region that are in the top 5 in the country in various events, and they don't compete at regionals. And then they go to nationals, and sometimes it goes well and sometimes it doesn't go well. Now, there's not enough data yet to support making like data-driven decisions about that, although I'm working on it, right? At least post-COVID, things haven't worked out too well for the athletes that did compete at regionals and then tried to come back and throw at nationals. But then again, there's also evidence the other way also, right? There's not enough athletes, not enough of a sample size to run some decent regressions and put together some models that are predictive of success at nationals, right? There aren't yet, at least for my satisfaction, and I feel comfortable saying that, right? Small body of athletes. Now, however, when you look at last year's outdoor nationals and you look at the athlete performances, very, very, very few athletes had season best performances at outdoor nationals, and the same can be said for indoor nationals. Now we're talking, right? Now we got a big body. We got 100 athletes or so between men and women, where we only had, I think, I don't know, like 12, 14 personal best performances across all the throwing events, all 8 between men and women. So essentially we have about 80 female athletes and 80 male athletes, right? There were some athletes that competed in all 3 events that took up the 22 slots. Very few personal best performances. This year, there were a slew of personal best performances at nationals. Different athletes, though, right? So, trying to use data as the decision-making process, right? In this case, after this year's outdoor nationals, my goal is to try and put together some good models and try and figure out if there is an advantage or not statistically, right? To competing at certain meets before nationals, and what that outcome, or how that outcome impacts performance at nationals, right? So you look at like data analytics in the NFL, it's like blowing up and kind of taking over where departments are housed in NFL, or not NFL, I guess, team headquarters, where that's all they do is look at these numbers. Do you punt on 4th and 1 from their, 44-yard line, or do you go for it, or do you just go for it on every 4th and down because it doesn't make a difference anyway, right? So that's what with throwing, I'm going to try and figure out. Now, if there's any other researchers or anybody who's interested in this stuff, any other data people that want to try and figure it out, please let me know, because I think, as of right now, our variable that we're going to be looking at, trying to predict to, is, of course, your performance at outdoor nationals. And as long as we have enough athletes that compete, at regionals beforehand, and how well they compete, I think we'd run a decent model. Now, I don't know if that data, right, it's not going to be peer-reviewed. It's just going to show up on a couple Instagram slides and go through what the methodology is and how we came to those conclusions, if coaches are going to take that into consideration, or if they're just going to say, whatever, I'm just going to compete because I'm going to compete. I wonder if that would sway people's decisions, or coaches' decisions, in allowing or having their athletes compete at those meets. It is pretty interesting, though, right? Like, we try and coach by feel, and I think coach by instinct and just knowing our athletes and how they react to certain things. But if you look at numbers and say, okay, like if 85% of throwers at nationals, whatever the number is, say 19 throwers at nationals in the men's discus, right, all compete the weekend before at whatever regional competition there is. And if they perform poorly at that meet, no season best, or they don't PR, that they're more likely to not throw well at nationals. Would you still have your athletes compete at those regional meets? So let's try that again. If we know that 19 out of 22 men's discus throwers, hypothetically, I'm just using men's discus because I have a discus thrower. If I know that statistically, if he performs well, or they perform poorly rather, at that regional meet, meaning no season best, no personal best, right? Just the mark. But they're more likely to not perform well at nationals. Also, have a similar fate. Would you still allow them to compete at that regional meet? I don't know. I think it's an interesting question. I don't know if anybody thinks about this stuff besides me, but this is what I do when I'm bored. I pull out my Excel files and have some SPSS pulled up and try and figure this stuff out, because I think it's really interesting. I don't know if it'd make a difference, but if you look at over the course of, like, I don't know, pre-COVID maybe, we start there and we're like, okay, athletes who perform well at regionals are more likely to perform well at nationals, or vice versa. Would it really impact the decision-making process of coaches? I don't know for sure if it would or if it would not. I think maybe some coaches might take a look at it and might think about it. If you have a big body of data, like if we're looking at hundreds of athletes over the course of a few years, and say whatever their regional meet is, that if they don't hit a season best there, that they're also more likely to not hit a season best at nationals. Would you still allow your athletes to compete there? Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Throws Doc Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Charles Inferna, and have a great day.